Welcome to this overview of Laravel. My name is Aaron Francis. I'm going to give you an overview of Laravel, the framework, and Laravel, the ecosystem as it stands in 2023. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter recently about people from other communities starting to check out Laravel as a full stack framework.
Laravel's incredible, and I don't know why we're not all using it.
And that makes me super excited. I love Laravel. The community is wonderful. I think you will feel very welcomed here. And I want to give you a completely biased overview of why Laravel, the framework, is great and why Laravel, the ecosystem, is great. So let's get started. The best place to start with the framework is at Laravel.com. This is where you'll find links to almost everything, including some first-party SaaS offerings from Laravel, all of the first-party packages, of which there are many, but most importantly, the documentation. The documentation is incredibly good and incredibly thorough. Every time there's a new major release, they read through every word of the documentation and touch it up and add stuff and remove stuff. So the documentation is going to cover pretty much everything that you want. If you're looking for a more in-depth guide that shows you how to build an entire application, they have that too. You can go to bootcamp.laravel.com and this will walk you through how to build a full-on web application from the database all the way up to the view layer. So if you're looking for more of an on-ramp, Bootcamp might be a good place to go for that. All right, before you start building your next great SaaS idea, we got to get the thing running locally on your machine, right? So let's talk local development. You've got two options when it comes to local development. If you love Docker, there's a Docker option. If you hate Docker, there's a non-Docker option. So the Docker option is called Laravel Sail, and this is first party, supported by the Laravel team itself. And this is basically just a lightweight way to interact with the default Docker environment that supports Laravel and everything that it needs. So it comes with the Docker compose file and a command to help you run everything inside that container. If you don't like Docker, like me, there's another option called Laravel Valet. And what Valet does, this is a Mac only option, but what that does is that configures services on your actual machine. It sets up Nginx, it sets up DNS mask so that you have vanity development domains on your computer. And it also will do switching between different PHP versions. So if some of your apps are 8.2 in production and some are 8.1, you can do all of that on your local machine using Valet. We're going to use Composer to create a new Laravel application, and Composer is our package manager. It's like NPM or Yarn or any of the other ones that I don't know off the top of my head. The good news is we just got the one. We've got Composer. Everyone uses Composer. Composer's pretty great. So we're going to say Composer create project based on Laravel, and we're just going to name it welcome. So if we run this, it's going to do a bunch of stuff. It's going to create a new project, download the packages, and then we'll be ready to go. Now, if I change into this welcome directory, I can do Valet open and take a look at this in the browser. There we go. We've got our Laravel application running at welcome.whip. So this is Valet handling that for us. It's running Nginx behind the scenes. It's running DNS mask behind the scenes. And I don't really have to worry about it. So now we have our Laravel application. Let's take a look under the hood and see what all we've been given out of the box. Looking at this project directory, there's a ton of stuff that we're given out of the box, and we'll go over most of it. The first thing I want to look at is you're given a Vite configuration with a first-party Laravel plugin. So you don't have to set up Vite. You don't have to set up Webpack. It's all done for you. You can hop over here and do npm run dev, and there you go. Now Vite is running, and it's hot swapping all of that stuff out. If you stop this, you can do npm run build, and that's what you would run on deploy, because this is the public or the production build of your assets. Not so bad, right? Off to a pretty good start. That's the front end. That is the building of the assets, right? Let's talk about the routing layer a little bit. So if we look in this routes folder, you'll see that we have API, channels, console, and web. The interesting one is web. And the routing in Laravel can be as complicated as you want, but it can also be this simple. You can say, hey, when somebody hits / with a GET request, return the welcome view. It's wonderful because it reads so clearly. This is not probably what you would do in most cases. This is what they ship with out of the box. What you would probably do in most cases is you would end up with something like a dashboard controller. and you'd have the class there, and you'd say when they hit the dashboard controller, I want them to go to the index route. And so you would set up all of your routes like that. You can also have API specific routes that have different authentication middleware. So Laravel comes with authentication middleware out of the box. It has username, password, tokens for stateless authentication through an API. Let's actually look at that HTTP kernel and see a little bit about what's going on in there. So if we come into the app directory, which is basically where all of the good stuff is stored, and we go into HTTP and we open the kernel file, we'll see that there's a lot going on here. So this is the application's middleware stack, and you can see that a lot of things have been handled for you. Empty strings to null, trimming the strings, validating the post size, preventing requests during maintenance. Laravel comes with a maintenance mode, and you can say, hey, my application's in maintenance now, and this middleware will stop everyone at the door. Or you can set a password on maintenance mode and let certain people like your coworkers through so that they can check on things while it's in maintenance mode. So this is the global middleware stack, and then you have middleware groups. So maybe your web requests need to run through a different middleware stack, including CSRF protection and sessions and cookies. But your API needs to be stateless, but you also want to throttle requests. You want to put a rate limiter on it. That's fine. You can make as many middleware groups as you want, and a lot of these middlewares come in the actual Laravel package, and you can just drill into them and see what they're doing. So it's checking to make sure that this person isn't hammering the API when they're not authenticated. Okay, we started at the very outside with the assets, the JavaScript, the CSS, Vite handled that for us. Then we looked at the middleware, right? Let's talk about the controllers and the models and the validation and all of that stuff. Well, Laravel comes with a lot of code generation for us. If we run PHP Artisan, we'll see all sorts of commands here. This is Laravel's command line interface, and you can see there are all kinds of things that we could do. What we're actually looking for right now, if we clear this out, we'll do PHP Artisan, and then we're going to look for some of the make commands. These are all of the code generation commands. And what we're going to do, let's clear, and we'll say PHP Artisan make model, and we're going to make a to-do model, and we also want to make a migration. So if we run that, you'll see that we have created a to-do model. We've also created a to-dos table migration. Which one do you want to look at first? Let's look at the migrations first. So if we look at the migrations, you'll see that Laravel comes with a migration system so that you can create your database tables. And then as you're working in a team, everybody can have the same database state by running these migrations. So if we look at our to-dos table, you'll see that we've just been basically given this scaffold here. So we have a to-dos table, and then we can do stuff like table string title. GitHub Copilot got that one right. We can add a column to this to-dos table. Laravel shipped a few migrations for us. Let's look at the users table. Laravel comes with a users table. Laravel knows, they understand that you're building an application and you probably want users. If you don't want users, you can just delete the migration before you run it. But most applications need users, and so they ship with a users table. It also ships with password resets. So out of the box, you can have your users reset their password and it'll create and manage the tokens for you. Failed jobs and personal access tokens also come out of the box. You'll see that we have our to-do model here, and if we open up the sidebar and get out of database, we can go back up here and you'll see we have a user model and a to-do model. We're currently looking at the to-do model. That extends Laravel's base model class, which is an active record implementation. It's called Eloquent, so Laravel's ORM is called Eloquent, and it's incredibly powerful. It handles relationships, it handles factories. You can see that we have a factory trait here. And so if you're setting up all of your local data or test cases, you can build out factories so that you have the right data there. And importantly, it's got really, really powerful and flexible query building ability. Let's look at the user model to see what's in there. This is the default user model that it ships with Laravel, but is inside your application, so you can customize it to your heart's content. It does extend a user model that lives in Laravel core, and if you look at that, you'll see that it has a lot of affordances on that model itself. They can log in. You can authenticate them. Not only can they log in, but you can give them specific permissions. So users can edit this post, but cannot edit this post. So there is the authentication layer, but there's also the authorization layer. By default, they can reset their password and they must verify their email. So when they log in, Laravel will send them an email and they have to verify their email. We've been talking a lot about the ORM layer, which is an active record style implementation called Eloquent. Below that, there's just the database query builder layer, and that gives you more powerful and flexible access to build queries without having to resort to raw SQL. Below the query builder, you can write raw SQL. You can absolutely do that. It will absolutely work. So it gives you this flexibility of where do you want to live in kind of the database stack. So if you come here, you'll see that you can just do DB table to-dos, and you could do select, or you could do insert. You could do all kinds of stuff without having to resort to raw SQL. You could also do to-do, where, name, is errands to do or something. And this is the ORM layer, right? So you have the ORM, you have the query builder, and if you need, you can just use raw SQL. Laravel supports a ton of databases out of the box. If we hop over to the database configuration file, you'll see that by default, there are connections for SQLite, MySQL, Postgres, and SQL Server. So if you want to use any of these with Laravel, you absolutely can. In fact, they've given you the basic connection to do that sort of thing. Okay, so you'll notice here that the host is set to env db host with a default of localhost, right? So this is a nice trade-off between local development being really fast and really easy and configured to just work. So what this does is this checks the environment for a db host variable, and if it's not there, it assumes, all right, we'll just use localhost and kind of see what happens. So this is great because you don't want to be hard coding this stuff into your repo, right? And so what it does is it looks for an environment file. So if you hop over here, this is my local environment file that is not committed. And what you would have on the server is you'd have an env file like this that has all of your secret stuff in there. This is a fun place to look because it does give you an overview of a lot of the application. So you can see that we have broadcasting. So if we want to send events out to the front end, we can do that. We have caching. Right now, our cache driver is a file-based driver, but if we hop over to the cache configuration, we'll see there are lots of different drivers. You have file systems, so you could put stuff on S3 or B2 or a local disk or FTP. You have a queue connection, so you can offload work into background jobs that's backed by a database or Redis or SQS. You have sessions, you have all kinds of stuff. So let's hop over to the cache configuration, and you'll see all of the drivers that are supported by Laravel. Now, what's great about this is it gives you a unified interface, and it handles the drivers underneath. So you could use a Redis driver, or you could use a DynamoDB driver. No matter what you use, your interface is still the same. You're still going to end up doing cache put. So you're going to put stuff into the cache and get stuff out of the cache. The same goes for file systems. You interact with it through this storage interface or this storage access point, but under the hood, it could be going to a bunch of different places. So if we look at the file systems configuration, you'll see that there are multiple drivers for file systems. So they're configured as disks. So we have a local disk, which is the local machine wherever Laravel is running. We have a public disk that is a local machine, but with a specific root directory, and that's where our public assets are stored. So if you want to have upload profile pictures that go to a public directory, you would use the public driver. You also have an S3 disk, and there are some more. You have FTP and SFTP. You might need it. And it is great because you interact with it the same way. So you could say storage disk S3, let's put some stuff there. Storage disk local, let's put maybe some logs there, and storage disk SFTP, let's put some enterprise data there, right? Enterprises love FTP. But all of that is abstracted away and hidden from you behind this storage facade. All right, we are really moving, but there's so much more to do. I want to show you one other thing. If we do PHP artisan make again, and this time let's make a command called hello. Let's hop back over and open this hello file, and you'll see that it's been given a signature of app hello, and there's nothing in the handler. Let's just say this line hello world. Now we can come over here and run PHP artisan app hello, and now we're running on the command line. So we've got HTTP and CLI, and now this opens up the ability for us to schedule commands, right? We can now run commands on a schedule, but we don't have to muck around with cron because Laravel has us covered there again. So if we go over to the console kernel, we were looking at the HTTP kernel earlier, now we're looking at the console kernel. So instead of HTTP, we can schedule commands to run at different intervals. So we'll say schedule command app hello, and how often do we want to run it? I don't know. You tell me. We could run it hourly. We could run it every 15 minutes, every 4 hours, every minute, every 5 minutes, every 4 minutes, every odd hour, every 6 hours, every 10 minutes, every 30 minutes. Let's do every 30 minutes. We can also say, you know what? I only want to run this command, maybe because it's some kind of process intensive thing. I only want to run it in off hours, right? Whatever that means. So let's say that off hours are from 2100 through to 0300. Well, what does that even mean if you don't give it a time zone? So you can say it's America, Chicago. And you know what? Let's go ahead and run this one in the background because it's kind of a heavy process and we want to make sure that it doesn't overlap itself. Look at all of this that Laravel gives you for free. So now we're running this command in the background in certain hours in a certain time zone, but we're making sure, Laravel's going to make sure that this command doesn't overlap itself by creating a mutex to make sure that two of these commands don't run at the same time. And you know what? If that's not good enough, let's say email output on failure to aaron@example.com. How about that? We could keep going here. This console kernel is a weird little microcosm that illustrates how well thought out Laravel is because of all of these affordances that are provided to you. This is what happens when you have a group of people working on a framework for 10 years straight. This is the kind of stuff you get. Let's show you one more. Let's say we want to run this every minute, but we want it to look a little bit more human. So we're going to say, let's run it every minute, but only like maybe 10% of the time. We can say, sure, let's return the odds of this happening are 1 in 10. And this lottery class is something that's built into Laravel that you can use wherever you need some sort of like random chance, some sort of non-deterministic thing to happen. Yeah, this is great. This command will run every minute, but it'll only actually run about 10% of the time. Incredible. Okay, we've got to move on from the framework. We haven't even started talking about the ecosystem, but there's one more thing I want to show you in the framework, and that's testing. Laravel ships out of the box with tests ready to go. So you can say PHP artisan test, and look, here are your 2 example tests. And not only is the output really pretty, like that output looks great, but more importantly, it's already figured out for you. It's plumbed. You can run artisan test and the tests run. You don't have to get on Twitter and be like, hey, what testing framework are you guys using? How do I set up tests? What are the best practices with tests? The tests are there. So there's a strong testing ethos in the Laravel community. We like to write tests. We talk about tests a lot. There are many courses on testing in Laravel, and I think this is part of the reason why is because it's not an afterthought. It's a first-class citizen. You can run PHP artisan tests, and your tests are going to run. Let's talk about the ecosystem. You may have noticed I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the view layer, right? So we talked about assets, and then we talked about routing, and we talked about controllers and models and the database and the console. we didn't spend a lot of time talking about the actual view layer. And that's because I wanted to save that for the ecosystem section of the video. So when it comes to the view layer of Laravel, you have a couple of different options. Some are first party, some are very close to first party, and some are third party. So let's talk about the different view options that you have. By default, Laravel ships with a templating engine called Blade. And I know what you're thinking. Aaron, isn't PHP itself a templating language? And yeah, it is. But we've come a long way since the PHP days of yore, right? So PHP is much more than a templating language at this point. So on top of that, we've got Blade. And Blade is a sophisticated templating language with components and layouts and directives and anonymous components and statements and loops and conditionals. Everything you would basically expect from a templating language. That is Laravel's default. Modern applications, though, need a lot more interactivity than just pure server-rendered HTML, right? So taking a step away from Blade, we end up in Livewire world. Laravel Livewire is a third-party package written by Caleb Porzio, and it is very similar to Phoenix Live View, and it's also, from what I understand, very similar to the new React server components. Both of those basically allow you to call backend functions from the front end, and then those tools plumb the gap in between. And that's what Livewire does. Livewire lets you write PHP on the front end, but really it's bridging that gap so you don't actually have to write controllers and you don't actually have to write routes. You basically just write these Livewire components, and the interactivity is all handled by Livewire. It is incredible. You don't have to have a long-running WebSocket. It is all stateless. It is all HTTP. So it's pretty easy to deploy. There's nothing that you really have to worry about when you're deploying Livewire, like I think you might have to worry about when you're deploying Live View in Phoenix. So Livewire is one step over from Blade. It still uses Blade. Livewire is very much based on Blade, but it adds all of that rich interactivity through a combination of Livewire itself and usually InertiaJS, which is also written by Caleb Porzio. Now, if you don't want to use Livewire and you don't want to use Blade, which is fine, you have a couple of different options. You could run Laravel as an API server only. You don't have to use Laravel to serve your views. You could have a NextJS app that speaks to a Laravel backend, and that is totally legit. That's perfectly fine. There's actually information in Laravel's docs about how to do that. Laravel is very opinionated, but it really doesn't make a whole lot of qualms about the front end. It weirdly has a bunch of different documentation and a bunch of different stacks to run different front ends. It has Blade, and Blade is incredibly good, but it knows that there are front-end frameworks that it's not trying to take that away from developers, right? There's another option though, and that's to use something called InertiaJS, and you could use InertiaJS with Laravel on the back end. Inertia sits in the middle, kind of like Remix does, and then on the front end you could have Vue 2, Vue 3, React, or Svelte. And what Inertia does is it provides the glue between the Laravel backend and whichever front end you want. And so you get this nice SPA-like feel, but without all of the downsides that come with actual SPAs. And so you still get the Laravel routing, the Laravel database layer, the Laravel everything, and then Inertia handles that communication between the two, and then you pick your favorite front end. You can pick Vue, you can pick React, you can pick Svelte, you can do whatever you want. And so that is another way. If you don't want to do PHP on the front end with Livewire, you could pick your favorite JavaScript framework and put Inertia in the middle, and there are first-party adapters for all of that. And when I say first-party, I really mean first-party. Laravel has starter kits for basically all of this. So we have a starter kit called Breeze. Now, Breeze is just a little step beyond the default Laravel application in that it includes some user profile stuff, but more importantly, you get to pick a stack. So you can pick Laravel plus Blade, you can pick Laravel plus React or Vue with Inertia, or Laravel plus a NextJS, or Laravel plus Livewire. All of those starter kits are supported in Breeze. So these are maintained starter kits to get you off to a good start if you want to use React in Laravel or you want to use Next in Laravel. If you want to go a step further, there's another starter kit called Jetstream. Jetstream is like Breeze, except it even goes a step further towards being a fully featured SaaS application. You still get to choose between Inertia with React and Vue or Livewire, but you also get team invitations and team management and permissions and two-factor auth. You get all of these extra features just built in. Now, both of these stacks come with Tailwind, obviously, and so all of that is plumbed together. So if you want a first-party starter kit, you have a lot to choose from, and you basically, regardless of what your front-end preferences are, there's something for you. That was the view layer. There was a lot there just to talk about the view layer, but Laravel gives you a bunch of options, so we had to cover them. We've done the views, we've done the assets, we've done the database, we've done the console. How do you get this application to production, right? So where do you host these Laravel applications? Well, remember back when you used to do PHP? I know that you used to, and you could just put PHP anywhere. That is still the case. But we have a few first-party solutions that are a little bit better. If you like servers, we got servers. If you like serverless, we got serverless. There are two different first-party hosting solutions in the Laravel ecosystem. One is Laravel Forge. And Laravel Forge is interesting because what Laravel Forge does is it configures servers for you regardless of where they are. So you give Forge access to a VPS. That could be on DigitalOcean, that could be on AWS, that could be on Ploy, that could be anywhere. And Forge will go out and configure the server for you so that it is perfectly tuned for Laravel, and it will also set it up so that you can push to deploy. You can get push to deploy onto your own server in your own infrastructure if that's how you want to have it set up. If you want serverless, because serverless is awesome. Who knows what it means, but it's awesome, right? If you want serverless, there's Laravel Vapor. Laravel Vapor is Laravel running on Lambda, and it's kind of the same model. It's actually your own AWS resources. So what Vapor does is Vapor is the coordinator of the resources within your own AWS account. So there's no markup. You pay a monthly fee for Vapor, and then it coordinates resources in your account. It will set up a database, it'll set up the Lambdas, it'll set up SQS, it'll set up SES if you need it. So Vapor manages getting your code into Lambda. And the great thing about this is, again, it's first party. So you just push your regular Laravel application. You may think, oh man, how does PHP run on Lambda? Doesn't matter, right? Because the framework is set up such that it could be expecting Vapor. And if it is expecting Vapor, it does a whole bunch of other stuff behind the scenes such that it can just run on Lambda, and you don't really have to change anything about your application. You can also put your applications literally anywhere. You could put it on Heroku, you could put it on Render, you could do whatever you want. You just need a VPS that runs PHP, which is still basically every VPS ever. So you can put them wherever you want. I would suggest using one of the first-party tools because they are tuned for Laravel and it makes it super easy. Okay, let's talk about first-party packages in the Laravel ecosystem. These are packages written and maintained by the Laravel team, so you know they are going to work with Laravel. Maybe my most favorite is Laravel Horizon. And this is a UI that sits on top of your Redis queues that are managed by Laravel. Not only is it a UI, it is a UI, and it gives you a little bit of visibility into which queues are taking longer, what jobs are running. You can monitor certain tags, that sort of thing. It is also a way to configure processes without having to go and muck about with supervisor, right? So you can say, all right, I want to do a balancing of 15 processes across these 3 queues, but give priority to this queue. This is like Sidekick if you're from the Ruby on Rails ecosystem, but it's totally free. Another one that's really great is Laravel Cashier, and this is a way to manage subscriptions with Stripe or Paddle. And I think most recently, there's a Lemon Squeezy driver as well. So if you are building a SaaS application and you need to manage billing, look at Laravel Cashier, this is an easy interface to access any one of those different drivers. There's also Laravel Dusk, which is completely different. Laravel Dusk is a browser automation tool used for browser testing. So if you need to actually run a Chrome browser, you can use Laravel Dusk, and it gives you incredibly convenient hooks into your application, and it takes away as much of the pain as is possible when it comes to browser testing. It papers over all of that. Like I said, there are too many to cover. We're going to cover two more. The second to last one is called Scout. And what Scout is it gives you full text search over your Eloquent models. So you can use Algolia as a backend. You can use MeliSearch as a backend. Whichever driver you want to use, Scout sits on top of those and gives you a nice full text search interface that is really, really easy to use. And you can use the power of those underlying drivers. The final one that we're going to cover here is Laravel Socialite. This is a way to provide, I think it's almost unlimited OAuth logins to your Laravel application. So you could have a GitHub or a Twitter or a Facebook or a WhatsApp, any kind of service that offers an OAuth login. There is a Laravel Socialite driver for it. A few of them are first-party maintained, but the community has basically every service provided as a Socialite driver. So if you want to offer social login, Socialite can make that happen in like 3 or 4 lines of code. The last thing I want to talk about is code quality. Code quality is incredibly important in the Laravel community. If you go into the Laravel core, you'll actually notice that in every comment block, each line is 3 characters shorter than the line above it. So it forms this nice, beautiful, flowing look that does absolutely nothing. It's pure vanity, but it's beautiful and it looks great. So it comes from the top that we care about aesthetics, we care about code quality. So we have a lot of different tools. PHP by its nature is an untyped language, but hey, if you like types, we got types, man. You can add static analysis on top of it. You can add extremely strict type checking on top of it. We've got stuff like Psalm and Laristan, which are static analysis tools that have varying levels. So you can crank it up to 10 and everything has to be extremely explicitly typed. We've got stuff like Pent, which is basically kind of like an ESLint type thing. So you can enforce coding standards across your entire Laravel application. There is no shortage of code quality tools. Yes, in the Laravel ecosystem, but also in the PHP ecosystem. We've come a long way, baby. So if you want really strict typing, yes, you can do that. If you want the flexibility and the freedom of basically no types at all, yes, you can do that. And within the Laravel community itself, you're going to find both. You're going to find people that love strict typing, and you're going to find people like me that don't love strict typing. And you know what? We all live in harmony. There's a big ethos in the Laravel community of we just ship products. Yes, we absolutely talk about best practices and architecture and preferences and opinions. But at the end of the day, we've been the underdogs for a long time. And what we like to do in the PHP community and in the Laravel community is we like to build products. We like to build products. We like to put stuff out there. We like to ship. And we're all still friends at the end of the day. So if you are Laravel curious, if you want to learn more about Laravel, please come join us. There are a few places I could point you. One, I think, is Twitter. That's where a lot of my Laravel friends hang out. If you want to learn a lot of in-depth tutorials, you could go to laracasts.com. Laracasts is basically the Netflix of Laravel learning content. There's also Laravel Daily on YouTube, who puts out a ton of great Laravel learning content. And then there's another site called Code Course that has a lot of tutorials there as well. There are really, really, really great resources available to you. Definitely check out the docs first, and then go to any one of these video learning sites, and you're going to find great content. So I hope that this served as a good framework and ecosystem overview There is a lot here, and we want you to join us. So please reach out if you have any questions. Leave a comment below if I missed something or if I misspoke about something. And try out Laravel. I think you might really like it. See ya.